Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the regular meeting of the Hsdsb School Board. Today, November 14th, 2017. Melissa, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Kathleen Abrazizi.
Here.
Jason Cipriano.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell. Here. James Sweeney.
Here.
Karen Yusenka.
Here.
And Pinkerton Academy Student Liaison to the School Board, Sophie Chiricello.
Here.
And also seated at the board table is Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Roxanne Wilson. Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please take a look at the minutes. We have one set, regular meeting minutes from October 24th.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comments?
There were no requests tonight for public comments.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to welcome Sophie
Chiricello.
She is our liaison to Pinkerton Academy. She's going to be with us for the remainder of the year. We're very glad to have you here. We will try to make your time here with us worthwhile, and we will strive to model for you appropriate board governance. The members of this board, just so you know, we respect each other, we value each other's opinions, and at the end of the day, when a decision's been made, we honor the long tradition of a democratic process, and we abide by the majority vote. Okay? We also respect each other's time, and to that end, we usually all come well prepared to discuss the agenda items, which allows us to have a more efficient meeting, because this is a business meeting. So we try to conduct ourselves in a very business-like manner. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you? We'd like you to be an active participant, ask questions as needed, and feel free to comment when appropriate if you have something to offer. If we're talking about Pinkerton or even something here at school that you remember and you could give us some insight into, please feel free to comment. And the most important thing I want you to know is you can feel free to leave if you need to get home or do something. You don't have to stay for the whole meeting, okay? I think that's it. So I just want to say welcome, and we're very glad to have you.
Thank you.
Administrative reports, starting with Mr. Collins.
It's a pleasure seeing Sophie Chiricello here. Remember, is a nice young lady from a great family. She and her brother spent a few years hanging out with us at the Central School. Very nice lady, so nice to see you here this evening.
Nice to see you too.
The enrollment at the Central School is still going up and down. It's actually gone down a little bit because we lost one, but we have a new one starting tomorrow just to fill in that slot. So the numbers are floating, I'm going to say around 470. You see the numbers that are there. On the second page of the Central School Report, I just want to call out a few things here. I want to say, first of all, thank you to the veterans. There are a few here and a few out in the community that very important people that do a lot for us. And I want to say thank you to our music teacher, Mrs. Stark, and our tech teacher, Mrs. Petroselli, for putting together a nice presentation for our veterans. At the Central School, we have a tradition of sharing many personal photos and stuff, and a few stories about some of our veterans that are connected with our staff and students. So it's just a very sweet little way to say thank you to these very important people in our world. I want to say thank you to the Central School staff for on parent conferences, that place was just hopping with parents for quite a while there, especially all day Thursday, but I have to say to you, the teachers were very accommodating before school, after school. A couple teachers stayed a few evenings just to fit it into some parents' schedules. So thank you to the staff members that did that, and most importantly, all the parents that took the time to find out how the kids are doing in school. Just on a personal note here, we're losing a wonderful staff member. Karen Thomas is leaving. And one of the new paras that just started is Kara Basilesco. My own personal story is I've known both of these young women in previous life. One was my student when I was teaching, and the other was a student I actually had as a principal at the Central School. So it's nice to see Kara Basilesco jumping into our program over the Central School. Nice background. Karen Gallagher had a good lady there. And Karen Thomas has been with us for a while. She had an opportunity to step out of the para world to become a teacher, so we'll sorely miss her. She did agree to stay through Thanksgiving. So she'll be starting at her new school in the month of December. But thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Collins? No, I think we're all set. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you, and happy Thanksgiving next week to you all. Our enrollment stays at 4:15, and nice to meet you, Sophie. I'm Maria Denola. I'm the principal of the middle school.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you. Come by anytime. I'll show you some changes and show you the digs.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is the week of our ABC, our anti-bullying club is still in existence here at Hsdsb Middle School. We are doing Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week. And the group has had a number of themes throughout the week. Yesterday we had Stand Up and Stomp Out Bullying. Everybody wore funny socks. Today is Blackout Bullying. We wore black. And Wednesday we're teaming up against bullying, wearing team shirts. Thursdays, Don't Mean Behind the Screen, talking about cyber safety. And Friday, we are wearing blue and gold, Hsdsb Middle School Against Bullying. But also in our Heart of a Hawk ceremony yesterday, and Mrs. Hsdsb, you and I had some conversation about this, not focusing on the negative impact, but on the caring and compassion, and who are we as a community, spreading that conversation in everything we do. That is taking on a great emphasis this week. The students have worked hard in our anti-bullying club, and we thank them for bringing this issue to our conversations. We had our Fall Sports Awards ceremony last week, and I bring you some of our trophies. The students worked very, very hard, and I was glad to be there on the fields with them and joining them for their excellence and their grace under fire, and they really represented our district extremely well. The final standings were the boys cross country in Division III. They won first place. The girls cross country Division III took second place. Field hockey Division II runner up, and that was, oh, what a game. Oh, just, yeah, how many overtimes, Mr. Cipriano?
Well, two of them, the last two games were
Yes.
overtime after overtime after it
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
seem like it was going to end.
I couldn't speak from yelling so loud. The Division II runner-up was the field hockey, and the boys soccer Division III, they won the championship. And for our boys soccer team, they've come such a long way in the past few years. And that is our new coach, Nicholas Arroyo, who is our new PE teacher. They showed great strength this year. Congratulations to all our student athletes. So they had a lovely evening last week. For Veterans Day, we had a really powerful, I believe, Veterans Day assembly. It was long. It was twice as long as it usually is. The children and the staff members put together many wonderful presentations. We had veterans that were in active duty. We put an all call to all of our families in the district. We had active duty parents that came in full uniform and sat with some of our members from the Korean War, the World War II. It was really quite a wonderful event. The students were you could hear a pin drop, and it went over an hour. We had Commander Howard Wheeler of the U.S. Navy, who was our guest speaker, and he shared his experience in Vietnam, and he was a helicopter pilot, and later served as a speechwriter for the NATO commander of the Mediterranean naval operations. And so following the ceremony, we had some refreshments created from our own chef, Joe Monroe of the U.S. Navy. And I was very, very proud of that evening, and it was videoed, and it will be on cable in the next couple of days for you to enjoy. We had our Heart of the Hawks assembly yesterday. This is when, at the end of the quarter, we celebrate students going above and beyond what is expected of them as a learner and as a school member. And the parents came and surprised their students. They all huddled in my office, and we brought them in to celebrate the Heart of a Hawk. And the Anti-Bullying Club did some skits, and I played basketball in heels. I'm still feeling it. But the kids had a great time. It was a good kickoff. Our parent-teacher conferences were held Wednesday evening and Thursday. Parents were out in full force. The teachers were very accommodating, and I would say the same thing, Mr. Collins. And always for our community to know that whenever they want to meet with teachers, we will schedule that meeting at their request anytime. So don't just wait till once a year. We're always willing to set up a parent-teacher conference throughout the year. Our 5th and 7th graders will be going to see A Christmas Carol on 2 separate dates at the Palace Theater. And our music department, we have started practices for the Addams Family. We have a cast of, I think, 80 school children that will be involved with that, with Mr. Kevin Fisher. On this Friday, we have about 25 students that will be traveling to UNH for the UNH Band Extravaganza. They will be gone from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. To participate in this band festival. Any questions that I could answer for you?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christos is going to speak. His director's report.
Yep, Christos.
Good evening, everyone. So, what's going on in the facility department? Building repairs. The floor unevenness in the floor at the Hsdsb Central School. We've taken precautions in making the floor even, making it a safer walking area for the children. Cracks being investigated by me personally, along with Dennis Meyer, Craig Jones, and their engineer. We put in a crack monitoring device on the crack itself, monitoring the horizontal and vertical difference, if there is any. I'm checking on that monthly. When the gentlemen were there on the 24th, the 17th of October, there's no danger of anything happening to the school or the kids. It's still a very safe environment. And were there questions?
Okay, a little bit of background here.
Yeah, we need the background
Oh.
history. We haven't discussed this in public meetings, so the public has
A little bit of background.
no
with,
awareness.
Caitlin and Kathleen were in the school going through a scheduled tour. And, well, why don't you, who wants to speak?
Can I?
Yes.
All right. Last year sometime when I was at the SAU checking the vouchers, as I do every Tuesday before the school board meeting, I came across a bill for the Turner Group, and I didn't know of any work that we were getting done through the Turner Group, so I sent out emails and asked questions like I always do when I come across some spending that I don't understand. And the information was relayed that there was a crack in the wall in the library at HCS, and it's where the 68 wing is attached to the 88 wing. And they weren't sure about it, so they're just getting a structural engineer to assess the situation. And then, you know, I thought crack, so I thought little crack, you know, and didn't think much else about it. And then Caitlin and I went on our special education tour with Mrs. Gallagher a few weeks back, and we walked through the library, and Caitlin tripped on the floor, and then I realized, well, we both realized just how big this crack is. We were trying to think of maybe a possible earthquake that happened. Anyhow, we were concerned with the condition of the library at the central school. And I think you ended up taking over, didn't you, from there?
We reached out to facilities to find out how substantial this was. Kathleen remembered that there had been something that happened the year before. So we kind of turned it over to Chris and Tom to look into this more and make sure that it was safe, and because it looks it looks substantial to the untrained eye, and the difference in the floor levels is enough that I stumbled over it, and we want to make sure it's a safe environment. So that's background.
And by the end of that day,
Oh, yeah, the
saw to it that there was tape.
the response was terrific.
There's
That
been
there was
something
tape on the
very-
floor
yeah.
so that the
Posts.
kids could see where the incline was, where the crack was, and so they wouldn't trip over it.
And I believe some rearranging of furniture as well.
Correct.
Place.
There's specific walking spaces to be used by
Right.
the kids and teachers and staff and faculty.
So then I believe that report had to be retrieved. You know more about it after here, about what happened. That report from Turner Group had to be retrieved and reviewed, correct? And then we went, or you went to, what's the other company's name?
Dennis Meyer,
Dennis
the
Meyer.
architect. Yep,
Right, and had him review it. And
Correct.
his findings were that we should monitor the crack
correct,
and repair the floor,
correct,
and that the cause of the crack is really unknown,
correct,
but it could be one of 3 possible factors.
correct.
Okay, so I think now we're all on the same page.
Okay, well, the 3 possible factors are snow load, incorrect placement of the expansion joint. When you have an old building and a new building, you're going to put that expansion joint where it is, or what were the spaces originally used. If I go back at the 1987 blueprint, it shows a library on the 87 side of the crack. According to my information, the 66 side was meant to be just a classroom. So designing a school building, the structural engineer is going to look exactly what use that classroom is going to be used for. Where we converted the entire space into a library, that dead load could have, it's one of the possibilities of the differential. So that's the expansion crack, the differential use in the classroom, or snow loads on the roof. Any one of those combinations, or all 3 of those combinations, could have led to the stress crack in that. Steps were taken to correct the floor. We have a quote and a PO from Ed's Flooring, and they're going to get back to me with a schedule this week for the repair of that crack. It'll be a 3-day process. It'll happen on a Friday and be completed by sometime on Sunday, with the floor being, or the carpet being re-glued down and ready for use the next day on Monday.
I guess my concern is, any indication on how long that had been there, or how long it had been there in order to get to that degree?
Well, the original crack monitor was installed on 11/16 of 2016. So I would think it's been that old since someone noticed it.
And can I just interrupt too, is that was based on the Turner report, which the Turner report looked at it and recommended the same type of thing as
Correct.
monitoring it.
Monitoring it.
They didn't feel it was a structural hazard. very similar to what the engineers just talked
Ex-
about with you.
Exactly what they said. It was just a stress crack. And
Much like a foundation of a house when it settles.
Or
is
in
the way
sheetrock.
they were-
Yep,
they
it's
were
just
explaining it.
one of those things.
And I
they
think the thing that I appreciated was, because I walked the floor today, is that he's installed it in such a way that there's kind of a ramp there. So you don't even see that half-inch or inch gap between the two floors that did appear. So that ramp has made it very easy to go up and down, and the tripping hazard, I think, is pretty much gone because of that,
Correct,
on both sides of that floor.
correct.
Okay. So he did do that right away.
So I think if I'm understanding everything correctly, since I wasn't involved in sort of the discovery and the process, the key takeaways of this are there's a crack that to the layperson may appear large. The crack does not pose a safety hazard in terms of the structural integrity of the building where the area where the kids are. And that's the opinion of structural engineers that were brought in specifically to take a look at it. We're monitoring it, and should it develop into something that's of a concern, it'll be addressed immediately. But we're aware that it's there, but at this point, it's not. Not a
There's no,
safety issue.
yeah, there's no safety concern with it at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Sophie, do you have anything you'd like to report out on? Yep. Please do.
Good afternoon. So as November ends, all the fall sports teams are starting to compete at the end of their season. So this previous weekend, Pinkerton football varsity beat the undefeated Salem team 45-28 with touchdowns by 2 Hsdsb students. They'll be going on this weekend to compete for the finals versus Winnicunnet at UNH. Varsity cheerleading got second place overall at states. And Pinkerton's girls varsity cross country won New England's for the first time in 40 years this previous weekend, with 2 Hsdsb students on their varsity team. Also this coming weekend, Pinkerton's Special Olympic bowling team will be competing at Park Place Lanes in Salem. This bowling team consists of students, and it also consists of helpers to help the students who will be bowling, all from Hempstead. Along with sports, Hempstead students are showing off their skills during Pinkerton's Got Talents auditions this week. Some of the auditions include singing acts. Last year, a Hempstead student won second place for their aerial act. She will be trying out again this year and competing. Pinkerton's VEX robotic team competed in the last week of October. They had 6 teams competing, and 4 of them made it to the quarterfinals. And finally, during the last week of October, 9 members of the Pinkerton Academy FFA chapter, which is an organization at Pinkerton for Business, traveled to Indianapolis to attend the 90th National FFA Conference. Along with 65,000 FFA members, they competed in career development, winning 2 silver and 2 bronze medals. They also attended a career expo and a college fair and leadership workshops. With all of the sports for the fall ending around November, the winter sports will be starting after Thanksgiving break, and the meetings for those sports have already taken place. Any questions?
I would only add that the Pinkerton girls cross country team is also coached by a Hampstead resident, Amy Bernard. Is the coach.
Yep, they will be competing at regionals this weekend, but not with Pinkerton, because Pinkerton could not support regionals for some reason, so they'll be competing as just a team.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. Nice job. Thank you very much.
So
Karen.
do we have a copy?
Can I ask a couple of questions
This
about,
helps. The minutes.
Thank you.
well, I have a question for Karen Gallagher.
Sure, she's here.
Karen, do you mind taking the podium so that I can ask you a question? Regarding the community outreach with Tracy Callender, I have gotten some communication from parents who are interested in this event. Do you want to talk about the event first?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is going to be a community outreach event. It's going to be sponsored by the Special Education Department. Tracy Calander is one of our special education teachers at Hampstead Central School, and she's going to give a presentation on developing early literacy skills. It will be a PowerPoint, and there will be time for questions and answers, and at the end, she will provide anybody who participates with some resources and recommendations of fun activities and ideas to help young children develop their literacy skills. So I highly encourage people to attend. I think it will be fabulous. Tracy does a great job, and I think you'll walk away with some great ideas that will be fun at the same time to do with kids. The date is Wednesday evening, November 29th, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, and it will be held in the Hampstead Central School cafeteria.
And it's targeted for preschool to grade 2.
Yes, thank you for that.
No problem.
Yep.
All right, so the questions are, I have little kids and they go to bed. I'd love to be able to attend, but I can't. Is there any possibility of doing something like this during the day in the future?
In the future,
I know it's tough because she works
I
in the school.
think that would be difficult because we're all involved in working with the kids during the school day.
So the backup question is, can something be posted online or YouTube or something like that so that they can tune in after the fact?
Yeah, I can look into seeing what we could do.
Yeah, even if it is a PowerPoint presentation, perhaps that could be shared. I don't know.
Okay,
But that's
I'll look into it.
that's it.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All set?
Do you want to hear from Doris about, she has the update on the committee. Would you like to hear from her on that? The homework committee? No? I can talk about it later on in the meeting if you want an update.
It's up to you. Who wants to, we're going to hear about the homework committee at some point.
I know, but you're the chair. You have it in your report. I'll just let Doris talk. Come on.
So we have formed the 10-member Superintendent's Advisory Committee on Homework. We have had 2 meetings thus far. We have a 3rd meeting scheduled for the end of the month, and we'll probably have 1 to 2 meetings in December. And we have reviewed our current policy on homework, our current procedure on homework. We have examined the practices at each grade level, K through 8, plus we have Amy Bernard's on our committee, so she's been representing Pinkerton and sharing with us the homework practices and expectations for Pinkerton Academy. And we are currently looking at all research on homework. Research from such organizations as the National Council of Teachers of Math or Teachers of English, other educational organizations, the Washington Post. We've been, some committee members have been reading books on homework, professional resources on homework, and what we did this past week and are continuing at our next meeting, looking at the benefits of homework, the drawbacks of homework, and what is considered to be meaningful homework based on all the research that we have been reviewing. And then next steps include identifying problems and suggestions for improving our current policy and procedure and practices on homework.
And what date, do we have a date in mind when you're going to report back with that final recommendation to the board?
Well, we're going to have at least 2 to 3 more meetings, so the report itself may not be presented until January.
Okay. So I think originally we said we wanted it somewhere in December. January? Okay. After Christmas?
After Christmas, definitely
Okay.
after Christmas.
We had a meeting that got canceled because of the power outages and windstorm, so
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, we did.
thank you.
Okay, current business. Going to hear from Tom Gary and Sandy Hawkins. Transportation update, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me, and most of all, thank you for your patience and giving me time to collect the data and the information that you have asked for. I appreciate it. The first thing to present is just the transportation report as far as ridership, average ridership that we are getting on our buses this year. I believe you have it in your packets. So I think we're doing pretty well at some of the areas that we had issues with was the arrival time at the Hsdsb Middle School after the Pinkerton runs in the afternoon. And it seems on most good days that the buses are getting there by 3 o'clock and boarded and on their way. So in my opinion, that's pretty good, considering the time that they come from Pinkerton. Hempstead Central School, the arrival, we still have some buses that come after 3:30. Those are the ones that are highlighted that are still concerns to me, as well as I know at the school level. So those are the ones that I'm going to continue to monitor and keep a watch on. As far as ridership for percentage-wise, with Pinkerton, those numbers do not include our seniors. We don't include them in the numbers because most of the time they do drive. And we do have some juniors who drive as well. So they're at about 58%. And then the middle school right now is about 70%, which is just a few percent less than last year. And the same with the central school at 64%. The central school numbers, which include kindergarten, but do not, it would be a give or take because the AM or the PM are counted in that number. It's not some, but the full day are there anyways. But they're still just a few percent less than last year. Pretty much, and these figures were taken the last week of September and the first week of October by the drivers to give me their averages. The other thing that you had asked for was for the bus backup info to be on the school and district websites. So that has been also placed there. So everything is there. I try to put it in as informational as I could without putting too much to make it so that the parents can't understand. So I basically just put the bus number for each school that was being divided on a day that they're short a driver and they have to do a bus offload. So each school is there, and I put the normal times for those stops and the expected arrival times when they're on backup. So that information is on the websites for parents to access, and I will try to keep it updated as best I can. And with the backups, I continue to track them. We did start off in September. We had three offloads in September. October, we only had 2. And so far in November, we have only had 1. And that was actually in the morning on November 1st. It was a late call out and they didn't have a driver to put on that route at the time. And I also believe, being the first time in the morning doing it, some of the students were missed. I did get calls. I talked to parents, and we worked with the driver who missed those stops so that she knows what her part in that plan is. And also, in keeping track of the backups, I do go over the invoices that come in for the billing to make sure that we're getting our credit for those buses that didn't run. I also do check the sports invoices when they come in and field trips, just to make sure the accuracies are there, so that we have all the right information. And we redo the ones that come in wrong. There are some that I send back and I'm like, you need to fix this. So I'm hoping that this creates a more positive atmosphere with transportation in Hempstead, at least. I feel that things have been good. Parents have called me with issues, but there have not been very many, and certainly none that we could not address and take care of. So I encourage parents to continue to communicate to me if there is a problem, so that we can address it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gary, do you have something to add?
I do.
Before we take questions from the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank Sandy. It's a tremendous amount of data that she has to scrub and collect from between both districts, almost 40 drivers, and I hear her on the phone pounding them for the data. So it does take a while, but I'm glad it is pretty accurate. So, as you're probably aware, our contract with First Student for our regular pupil transportation contract ends at the end of this fiscal year. And with that being said, recently, Timberlane is on the same schedule. So we have recently put out a request for qualifications to bring on a consultant to help us develop the request for proposals for the next contract. We're looking to keep a pretty aggressive schedule, try to get the bid published in December with the hopes of awarding a contract in January. And I'd be remiss if I didn't offer the same package to Hsdsb. And I would like to ask your approval for a not-to-exceed amount of $2,500 to have the same consultant analyze the performance of the current contract for Hsdsb as well, and then also help develop the RFP and analyze the bids as they come in. One of the reasons why we want to keep such an aggressive schedule is to be one of the first districts out of the gate in New Hampshire, so we can get as much competition as possible and get as many responders to the bid as possible.
Could you speak to the advantages of hiring a consultant at this time?
Sure. The consultant will work in our office 4 days a week and work hand in hand with Sandy. The person is also very familiar with New Hampshire transportation regulations, laws, and practices. So I feel that this person could bring a lot to the table as far as developing the RFP. I think as we move forward, we're looking to add more technology on the buses, safety items, and I think bringing another set of eyes will help us get that.
Is this someone who works internally with First Student?
No, this is an independent consultant.
Okay.
Yes, yep. So this company carries their own liability insurance and also insurance for errors and omissions for what they present to us if when we go out to use it. So I guess I use the analogy at Timberlane. I hate to repeat, what I use there, but much like if we're going to embark on a big construction project, we'd bring on consultants, architects, and engineers. With this being a 7-figure contract, we'd like to bring on consulting services to help make sure we get the best value.
When do you need to have a response from us? Would you like one tonight, or do we have some time?
I was hoping for
It's just
tonight.
we have
To be
really-
quite honest, I'd like to keep an aggressive schedule so we can get this bid published in December and hopefully award a contract sometime in January. That allows us time to plan for our summer programs, summer transportation.
Then I think we'll need to have a discussion now then, if,
I have
Jason?
a couple of questions. I'm aware that Timberlane has engaged this consultant. When does this consultant start work for Timberlane?
We're looking at the first week in December.
Okay, so presumably we have another meeting between now and then,
on the 28th.
unless you think that this person's going to be booked up. And yeah, I guess I don't have a problem talking about it and maybe even deciding tonight. I'm just trying to frame that. And second is, what's the deliverable? Like they're just going to say, here's your contract with First Student and here's how they did against it and give us a report on that? Are they assessing viable alternative providers and what they might give us? Like what exactly are we going to get from the consultant?
Sure. So what Timberlane is going to get is a full analysis of our current practices in the department, how we
So
route.
so we would get the same. You're saying Timberlane is getting this, but we
That's
would get
correct.
the exact
And
same
I've
package?
scaled the amount because Hempstead's a much smaller district too. So Timberlane's is approximately a $7,500 value of the contract. That's why I'm looking for $2,500. So they're going to develop the RFP itself rather than just photocopy what we've always put out. We're looking at developing one custom tailored to Hempstead and also Timberlane, of course. So that'll be published. We're looking for this consultant to also sit with the principals in both districts, ask their opinions on transportation, what can be improved, and then also develop some sort of forum where the parents can come in and share their concerns, take all that information, also hold pre-bid meetings with the contractors that are going to show interest in responding to our bid, and evaluating the bids when they come in and recommending a contract.
Caitlin?
For history, who has handled this in the past? I know you haven't been here, but who has traditionally done this when we've gone out for contracts before?
I believe the same RFP's been probably used for the past few contracts, correct, Sandy?
Updated yearly, but I have basically worked with the business administrator.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you worked with Mr. Stokinger in the past?
So you said that this person would also be, so this person does the front-end work, evaluating the current situation, try to identify what needs to go into the RFP, write the RFP, work with us then to release the RFP, and then evaluate the responses. Did this person's going to evaluate the responses as well?
That's correct, with us. We're
Right.
not turning it all over, it'll be
Right.
a partnership.
So
between the two.
it's akin then to the OPM that we have for,
Exactly.
where he or she is sitting with us,
Yeah.
reviewing the bid to make sure that it meets the standards that they would expect to see.
That's a very good comparison, yes.
Okay.
It's a trident for buses.
Yes,
It's a trident for transportation, right? Okay.
yes.
I'm hearing an awful lot of talk about the RFP, but there's also the other component where they sit down and they review our current practices, and they can make suggestions for improvements there as well.
That's correct.
Yes. So, I mean, it's
Okay.
more than just the RFP. It's a transportation consultant who will also be helping us with the RFP.
Correct, process documentation, you know, things like that.
How long would they actually be working with us?
Trying to think, doing the math. Through January, at least.
You mentioned Timberlane's 75 and we're 2,500, so over 4 days a week. So 3/4 of that would be on Timberlane and a quarter would be us of the 4 days? Is that how it is?
That's how I would look to bill it out, with it being two separate districts, is doing 75% Timberlane, 25% Hampstead, per hour.
So the 4 days a week you talk about, a quarter of that would be ours?
Yes.
All right, just, okay.
So to 1 day a week.
So 1
would be
day a
ours.
week. For how long?
For 2 months,
For 2 months?
for 8 weeks.
So 8 days of a consultant and sit down with building administrators and a night with parents?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have warned him already that he is going to be expected to do some sort of presentation to both school boards too,
Oh,
when it comes to the contract.
all right.
Caitlin?
I just have a question a little bit on the timeline of this. If they're talking about parent forum and stuff, I mean, when are, and then, but we want to be really potentially signing a contract by the end of January.
We're thinking early January, yes.
Just, you mean for the forum or to have it signed?
No, to have a contract in place. We're looking to publish the bid sometime in December.
Okay.
I see what Caitlin's saying, that's a pretty aggressive schedule.
Right, so we're not necessarily limited to a parent meeting. We have opened up a web-based platform for Timberlane where parents can submit concerns for transportation issues, and that's been pretty valuable for us to be able to track. So we always have that as a tool as well, is to be able to put out a parent survey,
But
something
that's,
like that.
so that's not something the consultant necessarily has to do? You're saying that's something Timberlane has now?
Correct, but the consultant would take that data and use it to tailor the RFP.
Any other thoughts or questions? I guess the first thing is we have to decide, do we want to make a decision tonight? And I'm wondering, if we don't, what are we going to gain by waiting another 2 weeks? What more information do we hope to get if we don't make a decision today?
I'm prepared to make a decision today on this. I mean, I think the transportation budget is somewhere around $900,000 annually. So if we're getting ready to go out to bid on, perhaps a 5-year contract for transportation, I think it would be wise to have a
Probably
consultant.
makes sense to have an expert.
Especially with
Work with us.
the transportation, the bus transportation issues that are nationwide at this point.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a number of times at our meetings for a while now, and the significance of not just the RFP going out to bid, but also in terms of how can we do this better, how can we improve in the transportation side. So I don't have a problem with it, and particularly where we can leverage some expertise there that I think that is valuable. So.
I'm for it.
Dr. Wilson, do we need to take a vote?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve hiring a transportation consultant and cap it at $2,500.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We still gonna talk about this?
I do have questions about Sandy's report, though.
Me too.
Oh, sure. I'm
right.
sorry.
All right, so I'm looking at the assigned numbers for HMS and the assigned numbers for HCS. And I'm comparing it to the reports from the administrators of what their enrollment is. And for HMS, you have 434 students assigned and a ridership of 70%. However, the middle school only has 415 students. So I don't know how you have an extra 20 or so students assigned to these buses. And then also with HCS, you have 490 students assigned. The total enrollment of HCS currently is at 473. However, 31 of those students are preschool, and preschoolers don't ride the bus. So I don't understand why your numbers are off.
Okay. I can probably explain that. I don't go from the total. When we have students that maybe go to daycares and other than their home, those numbers are partially included on the assigned for the bus. So actually, that would probably raise our percentages a little bit.
So
It's hard for me to,
So if a student takes bus 1 in the morning, and then in the afternoon they take bus 5, then they would count twice.
pretty much, because on my student list, I have to keep track of where they're going,
Okay.
both AM and PM.
Okay. So that's
But-
why the assigned numbers would be off
Yeah,
from the enrollment numbers. All right.
that's something in the future I can try to
Well, it
tweak it a little better.
it helps me to understand it.
And also with the central school, we don't include any PK. There are some PK who do take the bus in the morning, but not in the afternoon. But not many.
Preschoolers?
Preschoolers, yeah. Not many.
All right. Now, you have some times highlighted on the HCS PM arrival. However, I don't know if this was just an accidental omission, but school starts at HMS at 8 o'clock, doesn't it? Isn't it 8 a.m. that school starts? It's 8:05? All right, because I was concerned because we have one bus that's getting there at 8:03 and another one that's 8:01, and that to me just seems like it's cutting it pretty close, especially when we're doing so well at the HCS arrival time. Most students are arriving, according to your report, 10 minutes before school starts. So, they need time to go to their lockers and get adjusted. So I'm concerned that you didn't have those 2 times highlighted. I think that's room for improvement.
Good point, thank you. It's something that all they need to do is start their route a few minutes earlier.
Right,
On
and
time.
they're coming right from Pinkerton in the morning.
Most of them have a little break in between.
Okay, and then you don't have any of the HMS PM arrivals highlighted. HMS dismisses at 2:45, but yet we have a bus that doesn't make it there until 3 p.m.
Correct.
That's 15 minutes after dismissal.
Correct. And we cannot dictate the times that Pinkerton lets out, and it takes 15 to 20 minutes travel time from Pinkerton just to Hampstead, and then they have to do their route, which is probably another 20 minutes, and then get from their last stop over to the middle school. The only reason these times are good, because in the past, some of our buses never got to middle school until 3:10.
Okay,
So
it's great
what
that
I
there's an
did was
improvement.
arrange that so that we took away a middle school bus, because that bus in particular is the one that's out in East Hampstead, and that's the bus that would normally not even get there till 3:10.
Right. And so there's still room for improvement on the HMS arrival time, particularly for the bus that is not arriving until 3 o'clock. Pinkerton dismisses at 2:20, I believe. Is that right, Sophie?
No.
No?
2:10 is when the bell rings.
2:10?
Buses leave at 2:15.
Okay. And so that would mean that this particular bus that has 21 students doesn't arrive to the middle school until 45 minutes after it leaves Pinkerton. And I just think that there's room for improvement there.
Some of those buses are the ones that have the outlying
Right, well,
areas of
but then
Hampstead.
what happens is what we've seen happening, which that particular bus is not arriving until HCS at 3:40, and that school gets out at 3:25, and that's not acceptable. And you've highlighted that as one of the buses that's not acceptable.
Correct.
So, yes, there's room for more improvement, but I do
Definitely.
appreciate the improvements that you've made.
I agree.
Jim, did you have questions?
Oh, Sophie, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something to that?
Just when the Pinkerton buses leave, that's also when all of the buses leave Pinkerton and all of the seniors leave the lot. So traffic getting out of Derry through the traffic circle, particularly into Hampstead, is backed up for a long time.
Right. Yeah, and I know at the Pinkerton meetings, we go, they have, all the sending school boards go to the Pinkerton trustees meetings every once in a while, and that has been an issue that we've discussed over there, and they are working to try to resolve some of the issues there, because it's 5 different towns, you know, that is affected. And definitely some townspeople in Derry are upset about the traffic circle as well. Do they have anybody directing traffic out there?
So there is somebody who directs all buses. They try to let the buses go out before the senior lot cars. There's also somebody who is there's only one exit out of the senior lot, and that teacher tries to make sure that all buses get out and then the senior lot cars go behind it, because the senior lot also just added the junior lot to it, so another addition.
And I think it's 200 more spots.
Right.
Yes.
And there's 2 churches right near Pinkerton that also have spots off campus that are letting out at the same time. There's nobody directing those.
Right, and that's the ones that cost $200 to park at?
Yeah, about
Yeah.
$150 for both.
Yeah, okay. All right, so yeah, I mean, but there is some room for improvement.
Definitely.
I think you asked some of the same questions. Knowing that it's going to start snowing out, the 8:03 and the 8:01 arrival time is going to go past the start time.
More than likely, yes.
And seeing the ones in yellow, I mean, we don't need to monitor anymore. It needs to be fixed, and I'm not pointing at you as the only one to fix it. It might be in conjunction with Pinkerton to do something different, make sure the kids get on the bus earlier. I don't know the answer, but it just can't be monitored anymore. It's because it's going to creep the other way as the weather gets bad. So I don't know, you know, what can be done. You know, if we need to get together with Pinkerton, you know, and maybe what I'm going to say now is more of a parent, but I think the whole schedule is backwards. Maybe you guys have already talked about this, but some of these kids in high school are probably getting up before 5 a.m., maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and and we all know the clock of high school kids versus little kids is they want to sleep later. So I'm not exactly sure if you guys have addressed this before, but you know, a kindergarten kid is pretty much doing a 9-to-5 job over here, and the high school kid is, you know, working 3rd shift with these hours. And it seems to be, have you guys talked about that before?
It actually came up at the last Pinkerton meeting. They have over at Pinkerton, they have a time committee.
It's an age-old problem, though.
Everything,
Been around for years.
everything that you're discussing as far as the timing of the Pinkerton day has been discussed in the time committee. Last year, the time committee was discussing extending the day by 7 minutes because Pinkerton is on the formula instead of 180 days of school. They go by however many learning hours it is, so they shaved off time in between classes that couldn't have been fun. And they were looking to add 7 minutes onto the end of the days. Well, that was going to shift our days too, and our bus problem, it was going to exacerbate it, as well as the other sending towns. So what they're currently looking at is a potential for block scheduling, and they have not ruled out later start times, but they would need more feedback from the sending districts on the later start times, because that will also have an impact on our middle school and central school bus runs, where there may have to be some shifting forward. But all of this is still in committee and still being discussed. So it is something that's in the realm of possibility.
I mean, I never started school at 9 a.m. when I was a little kid. That was, when I moved here and my kids got older, I was like, they're going to school at 9 o'clock. They're little kids. They're up at 5:30.
Yep.
And they're going to school at 9. So I guess you know, I don't know, maybe we need our own buses in Hampstead.
Well, we have our own buses, they just do 3
No.
runs.
No, he means our own.
Well, so our contracted service is the Pinkerton buses. We pay for the Pinkerton buses.
I know.
Pinkerton has absolutely nothing to do with transportation other than directing traffic out of their parking lot. So if we were to just run our own bus company, just say we ran our own bus company, well, and because the times didn't work out and we didn't want to change anything, we would actually need about 16, 17 buses instead of the 8 or 9 that we need now. Because
this is
Yeah.
not a new topic.
No.
This comes up every so often, the 35 years that I've been here.
Well, I believe Wyndham went out
And-
ahead and did their own bus company. They run their own buses now. But it's all,
It also becomes whether or not it's cost effective to
Right.
do that.
and buses are expensive.
Right, but if you keep on talking about the same problems year over year,
Can I just say, even if we had our own buses, I mean, I don't know how, I'm sure everybody has done this periodically. If you're in Derry, anywhere near Pinkerton, around the time it gets out, nothing is moving quickly. I mean, I would venture to say it's not 15 or 20 minutes from Pinkerton to Hampstead when they're coming home. It's easily half an hour because of that traffic. And unfortunately, I know this is frustrating, and I think continuing to work to get it better, I totally agree with that. But you have 3,000 kids getting out at one time, and I don't know that we have much control over that traffic issue.
No,
And
we
I
don't.
don't even, I mean, having our own buses,
Well, then our own
think that
buses would be
they
stuck
just be
sitting in the
stuck.
rotary
And
in Derry, too.
potentially, you're adding more buses to an already congested
but at the same
problem.
time, what you're saying is this 3:40 start time is never going to change.
I'm not saying that there shouldn't be changes, and I'm not saying I wouldn't agree with, you know, moving Pinkerton later and how that might impact stuff. I'm just saying there's an issue here that we just may not have control over, and that's,
The bottom line is, with all of this, we are sending towns, and you don't want to admit it, but we have no control. Pinkerton is run by the Board of Trustees, and unless the Board of Trustees wants to change start times, it's not going to happen.
The other thing, too, with Pinkerton is they are looking at a land acquisition currently, and I believe that there's some sort of a component that could help ease traffic congestion with that land acquisition. But all of this is not, none of it is finalized, it's just what's being talked about. So,
Okay, any other questions? We need to wrap this up. No? No. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Oh, on to a budget discussion. Dr. Wilson and Business Administrator Jeffrey Dowd.
Good evening. Mr. Dowd, you want me to pass these out?
Please do.
As you know, this is the preliminary district numbers that we just finished this afternoon. And I say preliminary because we have, this is still November, we still have more numbers to get, and this is part of the process. So I don't want you to think these are the final numbers, it's our first run through. And I guess my thought this year was to have the administrators build their budgets with what they needed and what they felt was necessary for them to deliver the services that they need to do. So there are things in here I have not held back. And usually I hold some things back knowing that our budget is going to have to absorb a little less. So this budget that you see in front of you today shows an increase of, I think it's right now 5.6%.
5.68%.
Which is higher than it's been in previous years. But I still want to take you through the process of where these numbers are coming from. And then you have the opportunity as a board to kind of savor this and give us direction and have us look at some things a little differently. But the major drivers, Mr. Dowd has around, I think the major drivers, there's two pieces of paper in front of you, and if you look at the first one that has the major factors of over $10,000, right away, look at that tuition number, because that tuition number is $705,000. That's the number that represents the tuition to Pinkerton that's increased, the tuition to special education private schools that's increased, tuition to a residential program for some special ed students. There are significant changes that we haven't had to bear in the special ed world that we are seeing this year based on actual numbers. And we've worked very closely with Karen Gallagher to estimate those out for, again, next year, and these are the numbers that we have. And so as you see, there's a large percentage there all around some of that. The salaries are up, and one of the things as we go through this discussion tonight, there's some positions that are open that we have not filled this year. We have also talked as an administrative team for what our needs are for next year. So those 3 positions, while we still hold them, we are looking to fill those positions so it doesn't increase the budget for next year, but we still want to use the money that's there. We need a special education teacher at the elementary school. We're finding that we are just stretched way too thin at that primary, first, and kindergarten level. That's an open position we wish to fill. We are looking to have a math specialist. That's a new position at the elementary school. We want to really hone some of the math gaps that we feel we have as a program. Right now, we've been using a Title I money, and that Title I position, we are constantly reduced the Title I allocations year after year after year. We want to be able to do it correctly and not rely on grant money, because that's where the grant money has gone for a math teacher. We want to hire that math teacher under our budget, and currently we have a position where we would be able to do that. Third, we're going to be asking for a library media specialist at the elementary school. We have one that's splitting her time between both schools. We know that the committee that was formed several years ago looking at library services recommended by last year to have a librarian media specialist in both schools. We'd like to fulfill that obligation because we feel that is a much stronger resource for teachers and kids in the schools. It's not that we think Diane Connors isn't doing a great job, she is. But we'd like to have one in both schools. And then the fourth position we're looking at is a social worker. And we're coming to the point in time where, looking at the needs of all kids, not just special ed students, we see some families and parents in crisis, in need, students who are going through some extraordinary family times or extraordinary events because of what we see around us in the world today. And it goes beyond the services that we can actually require or actually deliver. And a social worker, we have seen more and more schools go to a social worker position because they're able to help parents go into the home. We're able to get them hooked up with resources that perhaps our guidance counselors are not connected with some of that through the Department of Health and Human Services. And we've seen more and more districts start using the social worker, school social worker role. So that's a position that we would also like to add. I'm just going to keep going with salaries, and then Mr. Dowd is going to talk about the other areas. We are also looking at increasing some specialists because of the need. Right now we have several people who are 4 days a week instead of 5. We'd like to have them go full-time so we don't have to contract out as much. So we have 2 speech and language pathologists. We want to, instead of 4 times, we want them to go 5 days a week. So we have to add a day for those 2 positions. We have an occupational therapist. We want to add a half a day for her, so she's going full-time, 100%. And we have a behaviorist. We need to add some time for her to be able to do some summer work and some work in the home with families. So there's some money in salaries at that level. So those are some things we're looking at. We've also considered, and maybe this is another discussion for the next time, is we have considered thinking about increasing our sub rates. We know that subs are a shortage, and how can we get beyond that shortage if we perhaps increase it $5 for teachers or maybe $5 for paras? We've looked at perhaps that being an enticement to have subs come to our district. And we know that other districts are also thinking about increasing their salary rates for subs for the day. So we haven't put numbers to the salary for subs, but I just want to bring it to your attention because you would have to approve those rates.
Excuse me, did you include an increase in subs for nurse subs?
Yes, we put some money in for using a vendor, because we do have sub rates for nurses already in the budget, but we didn't have some of that money to contract with a vendor, and sometimes we need to do that, which is much more expensive. So Mr. Dowd did put some money in to do that more often than we have had in the past in case we needed it. So that's one area. And then that's all kind of staffing things, and we will talk about more things. If that's the direction of the board, we'll be able to justify it and talk a little bit more about those staffing things the next time we meet. But I wanted to just kind of high level tell you where we're thinking.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
for the substitute rate, what is the current rate for a substitute?
Substitutes right now, it's about $70 a day for people who are not certified teachers. And if you're a certified teacher, it's $80 a day. So we were proposing to do it 75 and 85. And at least.
So it's a $5 day increase, not a $5 hour increase.
No.
I just didn't know
Did
where
it
you were
sound
coming
that
from.
way?
It did. It did.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right.
I'm okay with that.
The other thing a couple of other things, Pinkerton, we're using a 5% placeholder. I heard from Pinkerton today that our December 6th meeting, sending school district meeting, which I will attend, they are going to release the budget numbers for us on that day. So we'll have the Pinkerton rate to fill in on that day. That will be before the December 12th board meeting. And then the last thing was, as you know, we have a technology audit going on right now from Armin. They may have some recommendations. I believe they're trying to finish up the survey in the next week. Then that gives them time to write a report. And I believe that report goes to Mr. Dowd and Dr. Metzler with some recommendations. And I know there's going to be recommendations coming forward that we may have to think about adding to the budget. So that's another kind of open number that we just don't have an estimate to put in there yet. So those are the things I wanted to talk to you about. If you have any questions for me, or you want to go right on to Mr. Dowd and some of the other areas.
I think I'd like to hear the whole presentation first, and then ask questions.
Excellent. So in front of you, you do have two schedules. You have the budget by expense code, and you have a separate budget summary which provides the current proposed budget as well as the previous year's budget, along with the change and those major factors indicating over $10,000, indicating the variance. You'll find that the 18 budget, $26,145,123, has increased by 5%, 5.68% to $27,630,799. And major drivers, not looking at the numbers specific, but what is on that, what we're on pages specifically. Typically, we look at our insurance rates. We have a guaranteed maximum rate that is provided to us by our carrier prior to the issuance of the final policy for budgeting purposes, and that is at 6.8% as of right now. We've budgeted at that level, however, I don't expect that that amount is going to, we won't exceed that amount, and I think last year we did get some relief to come in a little lower. I don't know where it's going to end up this year. As we go through the budgeting process, we may get some more insight as to what that's going to look like. We did benefit last year from some reduced expenses resulting from some favorable warrant articles, union contracts, so that did help reduce that expense a bit. As Dr. Wilson mentioned, we do have some fluctuations in salary, both the addition of incremental hours to existing positions, and really the net addition of one position overall relative to what we can shift around and what we do not have filled at this time going into next year. And as far as insurance itself goes, we've budgeted a higher number than the 6.8% due to the fact that we have some variations in participation, and with 4 additional, well, I shouldn't say 4, but with an additional position coming on, and we have a fluctuation in who would be perhaps opting in for insurance in that regard as well. Other major factors that you'll note on Social Security contributions, I'm just going to go down the benefits on your expense code sheet. So Social Security contributions, generally typically a factor of wages, employee retirement. We have a little bit of a decrease on the one end and an increase on the teacher retirement based on rationalization on some rates that they've enacted in this rate cycle. We have some tuition reimbursement, unemployment compensation, and workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is up a little over $10,000. That actually was the result of an actual coming in last year at higher than what we had anticipated. We have some SAU costs going into the 310 categories. $34,492 is an increase there. Professional services, and I'm going to tackle some of the larger ones. Professional services. This is comprised of a couple different factors, but one of them is for behaviorist services, as well as some additional services that the district is in need of. This was discussed, I believe, during the department presentations. So forgive me if I'm being redundant in this regard. As I go down the list and look, you'll note that repair and maintenance is down $422,051. It's down $261,000. But bear in mind, last year we did have the $400,000 roofing project that was included in that budget, which was not included in the current year budget. Student transportation. So this poses an interesting question. That's in the 519 object code. Student transportation, we will not have a contract for next year. However, based on the fact that we're in the 5th year of what I would consider to be a rather favorable contract from a financial perspective, I do expect there's going to be a significant increase there. I've budgeted on the regular transportation end over 15%. We are the beneficiaries of a very good contract because of really reflection on what's happened during that time. Our provider, our main, first student, our main regular transportation provider, has increased their wages to their employees. They have been subject to ACA requirements in that time, and offering insurance, and really we have not seen a pass-through on either of those expenses. There was a threat of a strike last year in connection with some retirement benefits that I believe will probably end up costing the company more money. That's not my place to speculate. However, we have not seen a rate increase in that regard. I know that, and I believe with our special transportation provider, in light of the fact that insurance requirements were such a big issue, I believe there's actually a carve-out in their contracts such that if any mandates come down from the federal government, we would be responsible for those in the future. So really, we've had a very good bit of luck with the current contract we have from a cost perspective. I just don't know how those bids are going to come in. Tuition is the next major component, and that's in the 560 category. And yes, there is a portion of that is an increase for the Pinkerton's tuition. We're figuring approximately flat tuition to the school. We're down maybe 2, but we're factoring right now about flat. 5% increase though overall, and the increase in Pinkerton tuition is exceeded by the increase in our special education, residential, and outplaced tuition costs, which I believe were addressed by Ms. Gallagher when she had done her department presentation. We have a number of other increases. Next being in scope, the 640s, which are books and information resources. And you'll note that really we had a year, I believe, that Ms. Bucco can probably speak to that as well, where we had some shifts or a quiet time in our life cycle, and we're ramping back up in that again. And equipment, we have some increases in equipment, which was explained both during the facilities, during the technology presentations, and you'll note at the bottom some fund transfers. That's a factor, that's a figure that I have to use to get some of our other funds expenses included in our budget, and has been consistent through the time that the boards have been reviewing the budget. So we are here tonight with the budget as is. You've heard some of the drivers behind our budget, and certainly any increased direction that can be given by the board in that regard is very much appreciated. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I have one question. Of this whole budget, how much of this, in dollars, is discretionary?
I don't have that exact
Okay.
figure. I can certainly get that for you, though.
Because obviously there's some fixed costs that are going to remain. So I think, the board, from my perspective, we need to look at some of those discretionary items to see where we could reduce this.
Yep.
So that's what I was looking to see, how much dollars, I don't care about percentage, I want to know how many dollars
I can get
we
those.
have to play with.
I can get that number for you. I will note that you have 15 million in salaries and benefits, 12 million in other expenses, and of that 12 million, obviously, there's a factor of mandated required services that we are required to provide, such as busing and special education placements and tuition for our high schoolers. So of that number, I think you tend to see a lot of the discretionary in the expense lines. I can get that number for you, as well as some areas where those may be.
Kathleen?
I don't know if I tuned out for a second or not. Line 890, can you explain that?
Miscellaneous?
Yes, we have a number of expenses that don't particularly fit in other categories. I can get a full breakdown for you on that if you'd like. We have, I don't know if I have any examples for you right now of what that is. I mean, some of the things that fit into that category, just by way of example, are the diplomas and pins and awards. We don't have $28,000 worth of those, but I can certainly get the a more comprehensive breakdown on that for you as to what that actually is comprised of.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
Jason?
I mean, yeah,
Sigh.
sighing, yeah, I mean, look
What do
on
we
it,
do with
on
this
its face, I
number?
mean, I can't see us bringing a 5.7% increase to the town, given the other things that we're looking at. I just don't think it's not a number that I'm going to be comfortable with. That being said, to Karen's point, in terms of the discretionary items, we got to take a hard look at the discretionary items and start seeing where we can chip away. I mean, it's too high where it is. Let me ask, so we have a favorable transportation contract, so we're budgeting an increase of a six-figure increase. How early or how quickly, and maybe you don't have the answer now, but I'd like to know, when we know, or when you know, excuse me. We just decided to hire a consultant. Presumably the consultant who has more industry knowledge than we collectively have will be able to size things up relatively quickly and help us understand, is that a realistic number, or is there potential that maybe through competitive, tension we can drive some savings in some areas? I think that would be helpful even in the early days just to look at it and size it up and say directionally, yeah, I think you're looking at a six-figure increase come this next contract, or no, guys, I think, when the dust settles, you're probably not looking at that. And, that's going to be helpful because that's, again, that's a piece of it. So.
And to your point, by the way, I think that having someone come in to be able to take a look at that in the context of what best practices are and what we're seeing everywhere else. Relative to Hampstead in particular, we have a very unique travel situation where the buses do go a long distance, so certainly if we can get any information relative to how rational our numbers are for budgeting purposes going forward, I will do that and be able to provide that information for the board.
There's a couple of, I think, kind of longer term things that we should be thinking about. Well, one is a shorter term, one's a longer term. One is, and we talked about it a little bit before last meeting. We've talked about it at several meetings. And it's really for Karen and her team is when we have these out of district placements that and we're tuitioning into private schools and out of district.
Just be clear, that's to Karen Gallagher.
Yes, sorry.
I
Yes.
thought Karen said that as well, initially.
I think the question is if, and I'm not going to single out any, because quite honestly, I don't know, nor should I know, any particular student, but let's just say that we have a student and the transportation, the out of placement, you add it all up and let's just say it comes out to, I don't know, $200,000. Then a natural question would be, is that occurring because we lack the services within our district to support that student? Like we simply can't provide the support that student needs, and that's why they're going out of district. And then the natural question that would follow is, what would it cost us then to provide those services, right? Like if it's costing us $200 to go out of district, if it only costs $100,000 to do it if it's hiring staff, if it's if it's a space issue, if it's an equipment issue, so forth, then if we can net $100,000 save, like yes, I get, like on its face that would mean potentially could mean adding staff and doing some other things, making investments in some areas, but it's a smarter investment, right? If we're able to bring, and again, we've talked about this a bunch of times, and I don't want to belabor the point. The district decided many years ago that was philosophically what we wanted to do. That when possible, we wanted to bring those out-of-district placed students in district whenever we could, if we could provide those services in district. So that I think that's just a natural question that we got to ask ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and I think it's a longer-term discussion, and I think the board members we have talked about this a couple of times in recent weeks, and certainly much more recently than I've heard since I've been on this board. And not that it's a huge piece of the budget, but it is significant. It's a couple $100,000 is our energy costs. And what can we do? And we have taken some steps since I've been on the board to reduce our energy costs. I think for me, in thinking about this, is how do we get to absolutely minimal energy costs through energy efficiency, through smart building management, whether it's LEEDs or other smart building management systems that can help us bring down our overall energy costs. I mean, I think we all know as homeowners, the heating cost is going to hit us here very soon. For those holding out, turning their heat on, till they absolutely have to. Like the heating cost is going to hit us, but then there's other energy costs, obviously, that the school incurs. So, is there more that we can do kind of with a long-term vision to really bring that cost down to as little as possible? Can we become can we become a highly energy efficient school district? And that benefits the taxpayers, as we bring our energy costs down. So those are kind of the two major points that I wanted to make. I think the energy cost is probably like a longer term one because it requires changing out equipment, bringing in new equipment, and it is an investment. The special education cost is one maybe, again, I don't know that anyone has the answer tonight, but I think, like I said, I think that's philosophically what we want to try to do. When we can bring the kids back in the district, we want to try to do that, even if it requires an investment. So,
I'd just like to say there's one issue with that, though, that we have now that we didn't have when that first promise was made that we were going to do that, to try and bring additional special ed back into the school. We have a space problem.
Yeah.
Well, we have a space problem now, Karen's shaking her head. So the thought of bringing more in probably is just not going to be feasible at this time.
The other thing, too, is that some of these placements are court-ordered. So it's non-negotiable. We have to pay these bills, whether it's $300,000 a year or $500,000 a year. We have to pay that. And, the state gives us their prorated reimbursement whenever they decide to, at whatever rate they decide they're going to do it, instead of at the rate that they're supposed to be doing it. But yes, I mean, I would definitely like to see our students, our children, our community's children, regardless of their need, be educated in our community schools. So, I mean, if there is any opportunity to expand the offerings to meet the needs in district, I would definitely be willing to take it.
And I think like another piece, and not to opine too much on this, but another piece that kind of is a serious concern to me, and I got to wonder if school boards across the state aren't having this discussion now with SB 193 taking a step closer to becoming law earlier today. What I consider a major loophole in it, with regard to the manifest educational hardship piece, is going to potentially leave open the door to significant increases in tuition, private school tuition costs for districts like ours, and and that's even outside of the special education realm. That's a serious problem, or could become a serious problem for us. So
There's a lot of problems with SB
Yes.
193. I think we should talk about that later, because I don't think well, some of it does belong in budgeting, but for instance, if it's passed committee today, it was a House committee. They've made several amendments to it. I was there earlier today, and I didn't get to stay for the whole thing, so I don't know how the amendments were amended after I left. But should it come to pass, it has a 60-day implementation. We're working on 2017-18 budget. It's going to have an immediate cost impact. And there will be an increase of work to the districts, even if the students decide to leave. The district is still going to be responsible for a lot of work and get no funding for those students. It may even be, I mean, there's so much wrong with this. We should talk about it later.
That's a whole nother agenda item, I think. Let's try to stay on, it's part of it, but let's get back to budget.
You're right, though, Karen, though, in terms of the space. I mean, we definitely talked about in the last meeting that in order for us to be successful with philosophically trying to bring in district as many kids as we can, we need the space, and and that includes some of the spaces that again, we talked about last time are essentially closets or wherever we could find spaces for OT, PT, those kinds of services. But the alternative is the out-of-district placements, and the out-of-district placements usually have a much higher price tag associated with them than the in-district placements do. So there's a differential there, and I don't know that and I'll take responsibility too, because I've been on the board for a number of years. I don't know that we always effectively communicate that one of the consequences for not having the space in the school, it's not just that we have regular education students in the trailers, it's that we have our special education students that are going out of district because we're really compressed for space, and now we have to limit the services that we offer, and if a student needs those services and they can't find them here, then they're going to go out of district. So it kind of has this domino effect.
Okay, I think this has gone full circle. We've had a good discussion. But I think what we need to do now, like we have done in years past, we need to give some direction to the superintendent on where we want to be. We obviously, I don't think any of us want to be at 5.68. Last year, we ended up with a 1.86 increase. And as much as I think the library media specialist, a social worker, all those things would be good to have. I don't know if they're affordable right now.
I don't know if we can negotiate the social worker. That's where I am at. I believe that we need a social worker for this district.
David's free. Yeah.
I think, again, because we're not making the decisions tonight, we're just having the discussion. I think maybe I struggle with. I think there is a need for the media specialist. I think that when we have the time splitting, I think we do get classes and kids that are getting shortchanged. Now that said, maybe there's something in between. Again, that full-time person. Whether it's whether it's a part-time, no benefited type position, or some sort of part-time position, or it's a, what's the other thing I was thinking? Oh, the psychologist, right? We use an intern to supplement that staff.
Yeah.
I don't even know that that's an option or not. I know that the library sciences programs are kind of limited in this region, but all I'm saying is let's try to get creative, right? Let's try to get creative on some of these things. So.
I think, it's just like a funnel. Right now we're here. If we can bring it down and still try to sharpen it, we can do that. But you need to know that there are some things we've held off because of the building project, year after year after year. And now we're beginning to see we need some of these resources to do exactly what you're saying in order to provide the families and the kids the services they need to keep them in district for most of the time. That's what we're finding. And it's not to say that these are wants, these are needs. So if we need to cut, we're going to have to cut some of these positions because that's where the money is. It's hard for us to look at this and say, well, I understand we have $400,000 worth of tuition increases. It's hard to cut there because we're still estimating a year and a half out based on what we know who we have in front of us. We still could have kids move in. We could have kids move out, which sometimes is a benefit in terms of finances, but it doesn't make it any easier in terms of budgeting. So if you give us at least, where do you want that funnel to be? The administrative team and I work great together in terms of really looking at, where are the essential pieces. We can figure out where that is and bring it to you for the next session, and then,
I think the direction
working
is the
on it.
same as last year. Do what you need to do and start by eliminating things that least impact the children's education.
Yeah.
Thinking about the budget thing, I came across a little quote that I just want to share because I think it really sums up the way this board feels about budgeting and about our kids. And it was from Henry David Thoreau, very short. He's just said, kindness to children, love for children, goodness to children. These are the only investments that never fail. And I think that's a sentiment we all agree on. If we had the money, if we would say go for it, we think it's important to invest in our children. On the same token, we do have to provide a balance for the taxpayers. And that means we're going to have to cut and try to get this down. So I think you have the direction. So you can bring it back to us next time, and hopefully we'll have another good discussion about it.
Is there a palatable number you want us to get to?
I have a comment on that. I'm not comfortable setting a percentage number without knowing that discretionary number, because if we're at costs that are not discretionary, that are already at, I don't even know, 3%, that's going to impact what we need to do
What we
with
can
the
do.
discretionary number. So that's the only reason I'm not super comfortable setting a percentage increase cap at this point, knowing that we have non-discretionary, tuition numbers that that's not going to change, really. Is what it is.
All right,
for
good
the
point. So we
information
can
have.
move simultaneously. You can get us that number, and, well, then you'll have that number, so you'll know. They'll give you some guidelines, Dr. Wilson,
Yeah.
on how to cut.
All right.
Okay.
So the next session, we'll have some more numbers tightened up. We'll have another number to talk about and give you the highlights again in terms of what we're looking at, what we aren't looking at, or what we did cut, and have another discussion.
One last thing, Mr. Dow, when we reconvene and have this discussion, I don't know if you have it tonight, but it's fine to, maybe the next meeting, any insights that you might have in terms of revenue sources. Directionally, what are we looking at, particularly from the state? If there's any information you might be able to provide in terms of what we think that is going to happen. And I know, part of it is probably still undefined in terms of what's going on up in Concord, but I think that's insight that would be valuable as well.
At this point, perhaps we can look at a baseline and assuming no impact from any other bills that may be going through SB 193 or any others. But I would anticipate that those bills could have a unanticipated consequence and unanticipated revenue impact on the district. So I will certainly put those together and we can certainly discuss them. I think bringing this up, Kathleen, is a very good discussion. You mentioned we're in the 17-18 budget cycle, budgeting for the 18-19. And 60-day lead time on a bill like that can have an impact.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
thank you.
So we know to get the discretionary outline for you, and then to bring in some cuts for the 28th. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Washington field trip proposal.
Are you skipping me? Are you skipping me?
Am I what?
Are you skipping me?
Oh, sorry.
Were you in there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I go after.
Caitlin's going to report out on the renovations improvement project update. She and I both sit on the construction committee. I was not there last time. I was unable to attend. So Caitlin's going to report out briefly on what transpired and where we are in the process.
Since our last meeting, we have chosen and hired a construction management firm, Bonnet, Page and Stone. So they have also joined the construction committee. They're sitting in on that as well to work with the rest of us. At this point, we're finalizing. We're edging towards a final plan, still tweaking in each meeting and really making sure what's brought forward meets the needs. And the last thing I wanted to mention, because we brought on the construction manager, there has been discussion about if the project passes, hopefully doing a local vendor fair or some sort of process to bring in as many local companies as possible. We want to have the town have an additional investment in this, and we know there are potentially a lot of local companies who could potentially help with this. Yep. That's it.
That's it?
That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mrs. Denola, you can tell us all about the Washington trip.
Thank you. I'd like to just introduce Mrs. Katie Wolf, who is one of our 8th grade teachers and who is an expert in field trips with Hampstead Middle School students. And I come before you this evening to request permission for our 8th grade class to travel to Washington, D.C. and to be excused from 4 days of school from June 5th through June 8th, and they would use that as part of this experience. We are looking at this field trip as a support of our Hampstead Middle School's mission of expanding our students' opportunities to have real-life experiences. It is a 1-to-6 ratio, 1 staff member per 6 students. We have gone to 3 past inauguration trips. We've had great success, as most of you know. The cost is extremely reasonable, around $650 per student. We've worked with Silver Fox Motor Coaches and their tour company many times, and again, with very good good success. The students would be arriving in DC and touring the Lincoln, the Vietnam, the Korean, and World War II memorials. They would drive by and see the White House, the Supreme Court, the United States Capitol. They would visit the new African American Museum and then attend a Washington Nationals versus Tampa Bay's baseball game. at the National Stadium. They would then visit Mount Vernon on day 3 and Washington's estate and have lunch at the Pentagon Mall. And they would then, there's many other things in there. These are all proposed parts of the tour. And they would end their day going to Arlington National Cemetery, Iwo Jima, the United States Air Force Memorial, and observe the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So I come before you to ask you for permission to allow our students to participate in this program.
Well, I want to thank you for coming before us in a very timely manner this year. I remember last year, it was a little crunch time.
And the year before.
Yeah. Last year was pretty close, because we had to have an answer that night for Fox. They needed to know the travel. So, I don't know, I read it, I don't have any questions.
I have a couple of small, just detail questions. I'm
Sure.
trying to work this stuff out in my head, and it's not adding up. All right, so you have 119 eighth graders, and this is open to the entire eighth grade according to your last report?
Correct.
Okay, so this is open to the entire eighth grade. You need at least 120, and that includes the chaperones? No.
No, that would be more.
No, we need, there's 3 coaches.
Uh-huh.
We need 40 paid participants on each coach.
Okay.
Each coach holds about 55 people.
So if by chance every single eighth grader is able to go, then they will be able to go?
Yes.
Nobody's going to get turned away for lack of seat?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And we will have to examine in the event that we don't get 40 students per coach, including parents. And parents have participated in past trips, and they've been a wonderful addition to the trip, and it's been a nice experience for the students as well.
I was looking at the itinerary. It looks like a great time. Okay.
I read it, I don't have any questions. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Just a comment. I think it's fabulous that this is happening. I'm going to date myself, but we did this my 8th grade year.
I did it, yep.
You did it? I love that it's open to all of them. I think it's an amazing opportunity for the kids, both as a way to end their 8th grade year and to have an experience that they may not have otherwise. I guess I do have one question. It does say scholarships are available. Is
Correct.
there any fundraising that's going to be potentially done? I'm just wondering either way. It's not.
We have looked at scholarships in the past, and we have been able to meet most families' needs in the past, just based upon what's available. I would say that the cost of the trip compared to other tour operations is very affordable. We've worked with Fox Tours over the years, and this rate, my daughter's an 8th grader in Londonderry, and this is substantially less than other tour companies. And the, I should say the experience, the magnitude of what they get to experience is well worth it. And I think for the most part, if we can meet the needs without fundraising, that would be the goal. However, if the need should arise and we have the capacity to do so, and parents that would support that and become involved in the process, it would be considered.
And as always, on a case-to-case basis, we look at every single individual child's needs and their families and work with them in a very respectful manner, and reach out to them sometimes to say, how can we help? We have a very, very generous community that rallies whenever there's a need. So we do have some funds set aside for some students if the need arises.
Can I just comment to that? The kids, too, that may have trouble affording this trip will be the kids that benefit the most, and we will make that happen for them. And I'm sure that you believe that as well.
Yes, that was kind of one of my, because I think it is such a great opportunity, and the kids who might not get that opportunity are the ones who are not going to get that opportunity separate from this as well. So,
Absolutely.
Great. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
I think this is fantastic. I've said that every time that this has been proposed and brought to this board, that I think it's fantastic. It's a great trip and definitely a worthwhile investment. So I'm prepared to make a motion that the board approve the 8th grade class trip to Washington DC as submitted.
For a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you very much,
Motion
and
carried.
thank you to
Thank you.
Mrs. Wolf for all her hard work in gathering all of this tour information together and staying out so late.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Next up, we have 7 policies up for second reading and adoption this evening. Policy IHAM, JICD, IMDA, GCCBC, JHBB, BIB, and IHDA. These are the ones that we went over and discussed last week. So may I have a motion, please?
I'll move that the board approve on second read the 7 policies that the chair just read.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board comments and correspondence, if any, please.
Want me to talk about SB 193 here? No? All right. I don't want to talk about it either, but it happened.
I'll start.
I think, just to recap, it happened, it's going to be coming before,
Well,
before the House
It made it out of
in
committee,
January.
10 to 9. It's going
Yeah.
to go to the full House floor. I really think it's an overall detriment to our public education system. I believe it will increase the workload on our superintendent's office, our administrators, and sorry, I'm trying to choose my words. It's going to funnel funds out of public education. I believe the whole thing is haphazard. I know that they say that they've been working on it. I know that they say what their intent is, but the words that are written on paper are harmful. And hopefully somebody gets through to those people at the House and they don't pass this.
Okay, anything else?
I don't know, committees and stuff like that.
I'm good.
Caitlin?
Construction committee meeting.
Jason?
I'll reserve my comments on 193. I feel very similar to Kathleen. I did attend the field hockey games. They were tremendous. They were overtime, both thrilling games. In fact, the Friday night game, it almost got dark completely, like we were getting nervous that it was going on for so long. But great job to all of our teams, and great work. So that's it.
Okay, Kathleen, you forgot, but we did attend the Pinkerton dinner for the sending towns, and that was very informative. You heard a little bit about that from Kathleen before. And just I just want to make an announcement that concerns the town, not necessarily school-wide, but the selectmen did it last night. Hampstead has a history of having a Thanksgiving service at the old meeting house. It combines a little bit of Thanksgiving with town history. It will be this Sunday, the 19th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's thanks and giving. Thanks for what we have and giving to those who have less than we do. It's usually well attended. So if anyone, it's put on by, it's an ecumenical service from the different clergy in town, in the area. So if anyone would like to attend, it's a good way to start off your holiday. Thank you. Consent agenda, please.
Yes, I don't have a personnel report for tonight. In terms of my report, the Department of Education, the Bureau of Special Ed, sent us a notification letter, and because of our wonderful compliance with all the regulations, we are not chosen to have an audit, which we're very pleased about. And it goes to the work of Karen Gallagher and the work that she's done and her staff in complying with all the processes and the timelines that are needed in special ed. So once again, we're fortunate that we don't have to go through an audit, but every year, we go through this process of making sure that we meet the guidelines for the Department of Ed. Veterans Day, wonderful service. I can't say enough about the middle school students and staff and how attentive that group was to hear some very personal stories from Commander Wheeler. And, just the takeaway of pay attention to the little things because the little things matter, especially when you get to some of the bigger things. And, his example of making your bed every morning. It's the little things that you start doing, and once you do those well, the larger things fall into place. So I think the kids really got a lot out of it. And the musical productions, again, outstanding. December 6th, I've already mentioned the sending school districts from Pinkerton Academy will be attending to get more information in terms of the budget process. I might be able to get that number a little earlier, but I'm not sure, so I'll have to talk with Mr. Griffin. I did go to the commissioners' meeting, and one of the things that was talked about very much across the board in terms of all different SAUs in the state, the shortage of bus drivers, and it's really affecting some of these rural towns. They are in dire straits, to the point where there are some school districts who are still adjusting their time because they can't get all the kids to the schools with buses. So their schedules have been impacted. The other thing that was talked about was the lack of nursing subs. So it is hitting us at the state level. And again, we are fortunate that we have some backup plans in the district in terms of coverage and making sure that we always have a nurse available to us in terms of sharing the services. If one nurse in our district happens to be out, we have a great plan that the principals came up with in terms of coverage. And on those occasions when we can't find a sub-nurse, we try to go out to an agency. And again, it's only as good as the agency who is available to have someone that day. So it's a little bit tough. But I appreciated the fact that the governor was trying to work together with the commissioner in terms of some of the things that needed to happen especially around the bus drivers and the Department of Safety. So the Department of Safety is well aware of trying to move people through that system in less time than it usually takes to become a bus driver. And part of that is the criminal backgrounds check and some of the training that has to be provided to the bus drivers. So they know that they're pushing that turnaround even faster at the state level. And that's all I have to report. It's been a busy couple weeks, and it will continue to be a busy couple weeks with the holiday coming, and I wish everyone and all of our parents out there a safe Thanksgiving and to enjoy the family time that they will have.
Madam Chair, move to accept the consent agenda.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Motion carried. Thank you. I'm going to call for a non-public under RSA 91A3 2:I, security, safety or security. Roll
The
call.
board?
Yes.
Mrs. Abrazizi?
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell? Mr. Sweeney? And Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes. And we don't expect any decision to be made. So, Cable, you're done for the evening. Thank you very much.